So welcome to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over the AQA GCSE Maths past paper of November 2023 on the higher tier paper 2, which is a calculator paper. Now before we get started working through this paper, a little reminder that in the description I'll include a question breakdown, so if you get stuck on any particular questions you can see what topic it relates to and then you can go back and review or revise that topic again. I'll also include a link to the 162 Maths contents page, which gives you easy access to all the videos on the channel, including lessons, topic tests, audits and other exam paper walkthroughs. So let's get started on question 1. So question 1 asks us to expand 5x and x squared plus 3. So for this all we need to do is just multiply everything inside the bracket by everything outside the bracket. So 5x times x squared is going to give me 5x cubed, and 5x multiplied by positive 3 is going to give me 5 times 3, which is 15, and I've got a single x. Then moving on to question 2a, it says write 1.52 as an improper fraction in its simplest form. So for this, what we've got is we can write this as 1 and 52 over 100, which then becomes 152 over 100. Then all we need to do is then simplify this fraction. So if I load up my calculator, all I need to do is either simplify it, or you can use your calculator to let it do the work for you. So you can just press the fraction button, press 100, press equals, and it comes up with the answer of 38 over 25. Then for question 2b, it says work out 60% as a percentage of 20. So that's going to be 60 over 20 multiplied by 100, which gives us an answer of 300%. Moving on to question 3, it says use Pythagoras to work out the value of x. So labelling the triangle first, we've got our C, we've got A and B. Now Pythagoras' theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So substituting the values in, I get 17.2 squared multiplied, added to 12.9 squared, and that equals x squared. Calculating these up, we get 462.25 equals x squared. So x is going to equal the square root of that. And if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 21.5. And that's, yeah. Then moving on to question 4, it says A, B and C are 3 points. Work out the bearing of C from A. So if I just zoom out, so basically A is our starting point and C is my end point, and that angle is going to be this angle here. So to work out this angle, all I need to do is through 360 minus the two angles that I don't want, and that comes up to a total of 230 degrees. Then moving on to question 5, it says 3 shops sell the same type and size of lip balm. Which shop is the best value for 8 sticks, and what is the total cost in that shop? And it says to show your working to support your answer. So for this, what we need to do is we actually need to work out the price of buying 8 lip balms from each of these shops. So if we start off with shop A, so let me do the working out here. So shop A. Now for shop A, I'm going to buy them individually. So that's going to be 2.39 multiplied by 8. And that comes up to a total cost of £19.12. Then if I go for shop B, now for this I'm going to buy, well the offer is buy one get one half price. So that means I'm going to buy 4 at full price, which is £3.08, and I'm going to buy 4 at half price, which is £1.54. So if I calculate that and type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of £18.48. Then moving on to shop C. So the offer is packs of 4 was £11.40 and now is a sixth off. So the sale price is going to be £11.40 multiplied by 5/6, because that's how much money you're paying. So you could alternately work out how much money you're getting discounted and then take that away from 11.40. So the discount amount is going to be multiplied by is actually going to be £1.90 discount. So it's going to be £11.40 minus that, and it comes up to £9.50. And then we're coming in packs of 4, so that's going to need 2 packs. So that's going to be 2 lots of £9.50, which comes up to a total price of £19. So the question's asking which one is better value and what's the total cost. So the cheapest price is going to be shop B, and it's £18. So the final answer is shop B at £18.48. Moving on to question 6, it says round 1 of voting of head student is taking place at a school, and the question's asking us to reach round 2, a student must receive at least 4 out of the 15 votes. What is the largest possible number of students that can reach round 2? Well, for this, if there are 15 students, then for this, what we've got is, well, if each candidate gets 4 votes, so if we have a total of 15, then to pass you need to get at least 4. So from this, how many 4s go into 15? Into 15, well, that's going to be 3, so it's going to be a maximum of 3 students. So maximum there is going to be 3 students. Moving on to 6b, it says there are 900 votes in round 1. Sean receives 180 votes. Amy draws a pie chart to represent the results. Here is her method to work out the angle needed for Sean. Is Amy's method correct? Tick a box, give your answer. Right, now again, I really get annoyed with AQA on how they set these questions out. It's much better for them to give you the space to work out the answer and then give your answer for yes or no, simply because most students will go through it chronologically and go from top to bottom, in which you would make a decision and then show you're working out for it. So again, really poor. But anyway, from this, what you should spot is the fact they're trying to work out the angle, but when you're working out the angle, you need to multiply by 360, not 100. So the answer that we need to tick is no, and the reason for that is because we should, or Amy should multiply 180 over 900 by 360, not 100. You could also say that she worked out the percentage, not the angle. And you could also actually work it out properly, in which the proper answer you should have is that it should be 72 degrees, not 20. So something along those lines would be fine for that single mark. Moving on to question 7, it says here is a prism drawn on isometric grid, and the question is asking us to work out the volume of the prism. Now for this, as you can see, it's a compound shape, in which what I'll do is I'd recommend that you split the shape up into 2 sections. Now looking at this, we can see that the dimensions of each of those is what I'm writing here, like so. And the total of that is 5. So working out the volume of A, well, that's going to be 5 times 6 times the depth, which is 2, and that's going to give me an answer of 60. And the volume of B, well, that's going to be 2 times 2 times 6, which gives me an answer of 24. So then the total volume is going to be 60 plus 24, which is 84 square centimetres. So moving on to question 8, it says Tasha drove 198 miles. Her average speed for the first 3 hours was 45 minutes per hour. Her average speed for the rest of the journey was 31.5 miles per hour. And the question is asking us to work out the average speed of the whole journey. So for this, what we need to do is first of all write down the formula for distance, speed, time, in which I use my triangle or my formation or however you remember the formula. And I'm going to split the 2 sections into A and B. So reading the section of A, the information for A, it says that her average speed for the first 3 hours was 45 miles per hour. So the information that's missing is the distance of A. So the distance of A, well, to work out the distance, that's going to be equal to speed times time. So if I do that calculation, that's going to be D equals 3 times 45, which gives me an answer of 135 miles. Now, once I've got the distance of A, I can then work out what the distance of B is, in which that's going to be 198 minus 135, and that gives me 63 miles. Then from this, I can then work out the time for B. So looking at this, I've got the distance, which is, so time equals distance divided by speed. So the distance is 63 and the speed was 31.5, which gives me an answer of 2 hours. So from this, to work out the average speed, so average speed is equal to the total distance divided by the total time. And now I've got both those bits of information for me to work out what the average speed is. So here the total distance is 198 over the total number of time, which is 5 hours. And that equals the average speed. And typing that into my calculator, I get an answer of 39.6, and that's miles per hour. And there we go for that one. Moving on to question 9, it says here is a term-to-term rule for a sequence, and the term-to-term rule is double the previous term and add 3. The first 3 terms of the sequence are a plus 1, and then 2a plus 5 and 4a plus 13, and it says show that the sum of the first 4 terms is a multiple of 3. So for this particular question, the first thing we need to do is find the first term. So find the fourth term rather. So to find the fourth term, what we need to do is double the previous term. So that's going to be 8a plus 26, and then we add 3. So the fourth term is going to be 8a plus 29. Now we then can work out the sum of the first 4 terms. And that's going to be a plus 1, which is the first term, plus 2a plus 5, which is the second term, 4a plus 13 is the third term, and the fourth term is 8a plus 29. Now, if we collect all the like terms together and the numbers together, then what we end up with is we're going to end up with 15a plus 48. Now, when it comes to showing that it's a multiple of 3, well, we could say that this is a multiple of 3. So multiplying by 15 equals a number that is a multiple of 3. 48 is a multiple of 3. And a multiple of 3 plus a multiple of 3 equals a multiple of 3. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine. Alternately, what you could say is with 15a plus 40, and I'd probably opt for this one, is factorize this, take 3 out, so that becomes 5a plus 16. And as you can see here, we've got a 3 is a factor, so the answer will be a multiple of 3. So something along those lines, any of those explanations would be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 10, it says which of these represents the shaded area? Well, looking at this, everything is shaded apart from A, so then we don't want A, and so the option we need to select is our fourth option. Moving on to question 11, it says that a fair coin is thrown a number of times. It says the probability that each throw results in a head is 1 out of 64. How many times was the coin thrown? Well, for this, what we want to do is basically see how many halves we multiply together to get 1 over 64. So how many halves multiplied together equal 1 over 64? Well, 1 over 64 is 1 over 2 to the power 6, and so the answer we want is going to be 6. Now, alternately, what you could do is start with 1 over 64, press equals, and then just divide it by, and then count how many halves you're dividing it. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we go. And obviously, we had the original 6, so that would have been 6. Then moving on to question 12, it says, here is some information about members of a basketball club. Work out the mean height of all 50 members of the club. So for this, to work out the mean height, it's going to be the total height divided by how many people we've got, which is 50. So first things first, what I need to do is work out the total heights. So the total height is going to be equal to, well, I've got 30 at 1.6 meters and I've got 20 at 2.05 meters. So if I multiply those out and then divide the answer by 50, so typing that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 89 over 50, which as a decimal is 1.78 meters. Moving on to question 13, it says that a straight line passes through 314 and 1232, and the question is asking us to work out the equation of the line, giving our answer in the form of y equals mx plus c. Now there's a couple of ways in which you could do this. A new method, well, not a new method, one technique I've discovered that works nicely is using simultaneous equations. So if you use simultaneous equations, what you want to do is substitute these numbers into y equals mx plus c. So here what I've got is I've got x is 3 and y is 14 in the first one. So here I'm going to end up with, let's write this as this, bear with me. So the first one, using x equals 3, y equals 14, we get 3m plus c equals 14, and then using x equals 12, y equals 32, I get 12m plus c equals 32. Now using those two equations, so using this and this, what do I get? Well, I get 12m plus c equals 32. And I get 3m plus c equals 14. Now I've got the same number of c's and they're both the same sign, so I take them away. So I've got 9m is going to equal, what's that going to be, 18. And so m equals 2. And then using 3m plus c equals 14, I get 6 plus c equals 14. So c equals 8. And so my equation of a line is going to be y equals 2x plus 8. And there is my answer. Now, alternately, what you could have done is you could work out the gradient between the 2 points. So m is the difference between those. So using m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I've got 32 minus 14 over 12 minus 3, which gives me 18 over, that's going to give me 9, which is 2. So m equals 2. And then substituting m into the equation. So again, you could either use y equals mx plus c or the formula, which is y minus y1 equals mx minus x1 to work out the equation of a line, in which m equals 2, and pick the nicest coordinates. Let's go for 3, 14. So that's going to be y minus 14 equals 2x minus 3. So that becomes y minus 14 equals 2x minus 6. Take the 14 over and I get y equals 2x plus 8, in which I get the exact same equation. So whichever method floats your boat, but y equals 2x plus 8 is the correct answer. Now for question 14, it says use a ruler and a compass in this question. The scale diagram shows port P and lighthouse Q, and we've got a scale of 1 centimetre equals 2 kilometres. And the question is saying that a ship is less than 14 kilometres from P and closest to Q than to P. Label the region R where the ship could be. Show all your construction lines. Now for this, using loci, let me just talk you through what we need to do for this. So for this first step, what we need to do is we need to draw an arc from P with a radius of 7 centimeters. So if I just show you, I will do a more accurate version of this. So if I just draw a circle just as an example, let's make that seem more of a circle, and the region, let's say, is about there. And let's say, just for argument's sake, that this is not accurate on the screen, I will do an accurate version of this, in which this has got, this distance here is 7 centimeters. Now for the second bit, if I just scroll down, what I need to do for this bit here, I need to do a perpendicular bisector between Q and P. Now that's going to be basically a halfway line between the two. Now again, you'll need to do this accurately, and I'm just going to do a little idea of what you should have. So let's just say, for argument's sake, that this here is my halfway line. Between P and Q. Then the region R is going to be this region here, and that's what your answer should look like. And when you're doing a perpendicular bisect, you need to make sure that you're including your arcs where they cross to make that. So let's now have a look at doing that more accurately. So dealing with the first bit, which is to ship A is less than 14 kilometers from B. Now we know that the scale is 1 centimeter represents 2 kilometers. So this is going to be a circle of 7 centimeters from P. So with my pencil and ruler and compass, I measure 7 centimeters. Let me do that here. So again, make sure that when you're using your compass, that the pin, when your compass is closed, that the pin of the compass is as close as possible to the tip of your pencil. We want to measure 7 centimeters, trying to be as close as possible. And this can be quite fiddly depending on your compass. I think that's fine. And then all you then need to do is then draw a circle with the pin at P, draw your arc like so. So we know that the ship is somewhere inside that circle. Now the next thing we then need to do is then says it needs to be closer to Q than P. So what we need to do is we need to do a perpendicular bisector between P and Q. So for this, to do a perpendicular bisector, what you do is you set your compass more than halfway, and I would say that's more than halfway, and you draw an arc. Now this is important, we don't get confused with the original arc that we drew. Then put, without adjusting your compass, draw an arc from P, and it's these two arcs that I've drawn. So then to draw my perpendicular bisector with my ruler, look at those intersection points of the two arcs, and I draw my line through it. So this is my halfway line. So it needs to be inside this circle, and it needs to be closer to Q, so it needs to be this side So this side of the line. So basically where it can be is going to be inside this region here. And the question is asking us to label that R. So all I then need to do is, with a pen, just label that R. And there we go. Now moving on to question 15, it says the bag contains discs, and it says of the trial that a disc is chosen at random from the bag, the colour of the disc is noted, and the disc is put back into the bag. The trial is carried out 100 times. The table shows the relative frequency of a blue disc after every 25 trials. And the question 15a says for the trials from the 26th to the 50th, how many times was a blue disc chosen? So for this particular question, let's just scroll down a little bit. So for this, what we need to do is first of all work out the first 25, in which that's going to be 25 times 0.4, and that gives me an answer of 10. And then the second, or should I say the first 50, is going to be 50 times 0.36, which gives me an answer of 18. And so the 25th and the 20th to the 50th is going to be the difference. So that's going to be 18 minus 10, which gives me an answer of 8. Then it then says there is a total of 1,000 discs in the bag. Work out the best estimate of the number of blue discs in the bag. Now for this, what we need to do is we need to use the most reliable set of data, and that's going to be the one where we've used the most number of trials. So the most accurate relative frequency of the results that have been taken is going to be 0.32. So for this, all we need to do is do 0.32 multiplied by 1,000, and that's going to give me the answer of 320. Moving on to 16, it says that A is greater than 0 and B is less than 0. Circle the correct statement. Now for these particular questions, if you're given A and B and they just know that they're integers or whatever, in this case we don't, just make up a number that falls under the category. So for A, make up a number that's bigger than 0. For B, pick a number that's smaller than 0. So in other words, A is positive and B is negative. Now again, if you're not sure about positive and negatives and how they work, again, just pick a nice number. So let's go for 2 and let's go for -1, just as an example. So looking at this, if I take away the two numbers, I've got 2 minus -1, which is 3. So it's not less than 0, so that is incorrect. For minus b over a, well, that's going to be minus -1 over 2. That then becomes, 2 minuses become a plus. So it's plus a half, and plus half is not less than 0, so that is incorrect. Then I've got 1 over 2, and again that's not less than 0, so that is incorrect. So the one that is correct that I need to circle is going to be my fourth option. Then moving on to question 17, it says 190 people were asked how much they spent on takeaways in 1 month. The table shows information about the results, and for 17a it says how many people spent more than £20. Well, how many spent less than £24 is going to be, and that is a 4, is going to be 64. So then to work out how much more than £20, it's going to be 190 minus 64, which gives me an answer of 126. Then for 17b, it says Farah draws a cumulative frequency curve to represent the results, and the question's asking us to find 2 criticisms of her graph. So if I just zoom out and see the question in all its entirety. So the first criticism, you can have these in any particular order, is that she has labelled the vertical axis frequency, not cumulative frequency, which is what it should be. And then the criticism 2 is that the peak should be at 50 at 190, not 200. So the last point should be at 50, 190, not 50, 200. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine. That the top frequency should be 190, not 200, would be absolutely fine for the full marks. Then moving on to question 18, let's just zoom in so we can see it a little bit clearer on the screen. It says, by completing the square, prove that x squared plus 6x plus 13 is always positive. So by completing the square, what we want is we want it in the format like so. So to do this, what we need to do is we divide this number by 2, the coefficient of x, so that's going to be plus 3 squared. We include whatever's being added and subtracted, and I subtract whatever digits inside the bracket squared, so that's going to be minus 3 squared. So simplifying this, we get x plus 3 squared. 13 minus 9 gives me plus 4. Now from this, we know that this has got to be greater or equal to 0, and we're adding 4. And so therefore, the answer for all values, I should say, so for all values of x, the answer will be greater than or equal to 4. So therefore, always positive. And there we go. Then moving on to question 19, it says a is directly proportional to b to the power of 4. The value of b is doubled. Pete thinks that the value of a will be 8 times bigger because 4 times 2 equals 8. Is he correct? Give a reason for your answer. Right, so for this, again, should be the other way around. The option for yes, no should be at the end, as you should show you working out. So we know that a is directly proportional to b to the power of 4. So if I just substitute that and go through the formula, I get this. Now from this, what we can then do is substitute. If b is doubled, then what this then becomes is a equals k, and it's going to be 2b to the power of 4. Now from this, what we then need to do is then work out what this is going to be. Now here, what we should do is 2 to the power of 4 times b to the power of 4, and 2 to the power of 4 is going to give me 2, 4, 8, 16, so that's 16b to the power of 4. So when they say it's going to be 8 times bigger, well actually it's not. It will be 16 times bigger. Or alternately, you could say 2 to the power of 4 is 16, not 8. So something along those lines for your reason would be absolutely fine. Then moving on to question 20, it says rearrange p equals 2m plus 1 over 1 minus m to make m the subject. So here you should be able to spot that we've got m appears twice. So if I just put brackets around this and then take that bracket over to the other side, we end up with p 1 minus m equals 2m plus 1. Now from this we want to expand the brackets, so that becomes p minus pm equals 2m plus 1. And then from this we want to take everything with an m onto one side and everything without an m to the other. So what we end up with is we're going to end up with minus 2m minus pm. Well, actually, let's flip that so we can keep that m's positive. So let's take this to this side, the pm to the other side, and take the 1 over to that side. So I end up with p minus 1 equals 2m plus pm. And then what I can then do is factorize this. So I get p minus 1 equals m2 plus p. And then from this, I can take this bracket over to the other side. So I'm left with p minus 1 over 2 plus p equals m. Now, alternately, you could write it as p minus 1, p plus 2 equals m. But any of those answers would be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 21, it says that Jack is loading a van. The van can safely carry 1,375 kilograms of furniture. Jack has already loaded 1,200 kilograms of furniture to the nearest 50 kilos. A table has a mass of 140 kilos to the nearest 10 kilograms. Can the table safely be added to the furniture in the van? So let's have a look at this. So looking at what's been rounded, well, we know that this has been rounded. So if I look at the max and minimum of this, it's going to be 1,200. And if I divide this by 2, I'm going to get 25. So on a plus minus 25. So from this, what I then get is 1175 to 1225 as my boundary or my upper and lower bounds. Then what I need to do is then look at the second thing that's been rounded, which is the table. So again, if I look at the upper and lower bound of this, half of 10 is 5, so it's going to be 140 plus or minus 5, which gives me 135 to 145. Now, in terms of this, the worst case scenario that I want, or that Jack can have, so worst case scenario is that you've got a heavy table and the maximum load on the van. So from this, what we've got is the maximum load, the heavy table it can be is going to be 145. Well, first of all, let's take it away. So from this, we've got 1375 minus the heaviest, which is 1225, and that's going to be an answer of 150. Now, if 150 kgs is left in worst case scenario and the maximum is 145, so max table is 145 kilograms, then yes, it's safe as 150 is greater than 145. Moving on to question 22, it says factorize 25a squared minus b squared. Now this is a difference of two squares. So I set up my double brackets. What do I have to square to get 25a squared? Well, that's going to be 5a. And what do I have to square to get b squared? And that's going to be b. One's a plus, one's a minus. You can write them in any order, but job done. Moving on to question 23, it says here is a velocity time graph for the cyclist for 40 seconds. And the question 23a is, by dividing the area of the graph into 4 sections of equal widths, estimate the distance travelled during the 40 seconds. Now the distance travelled is basically the area under the graph. So what this question is asking me to do is to split this graph up into 4 sections of equal widths. And what I need to do from here is to work out the area by turning them into polygons. So this is the area that I'm going to work in. Now if I label each of those sections as A, B, C, D. Now for this, to work out area A, well, that is a triangle in which it's base times height divided by 2. So looking at A, the base is 10, so the area is 10 times the height, which is 3, divided by 2, gives me an answer of, well, actually it's 3.2. And that gives me an answer of 16. And so that's area of A. Then if I work out the area of B, well, area of B is a trapezium. And that the formula is A plus B times H divided by 2. So looking at this, A I work out as being 3.2. B, which is this point here, I work that out to be 5.8. And I'm going to multiply that by the height, which is this here, which is 10. and I'm going to divide all of that by 2, in which I get an answer of 45. Then for area C, again, that's another trapezium. So A is the smaller side, so that's going to be 5.8 plus B, which is roughly around about 7.4, multiplied by the height of that trapezium divided by 2, and that gives me an answer of 66. And then finally area D, which is also a trapezium, and that's got a value, or the first parallel side, of 7.4, a B value of, I make that to be 6, times 10 divided by 2, and that comes up to a value of 67. So all I need to do to work out the total distance is just add these three values together. So the distance is going to be 16 plus 45 plus 66 plus 67. And if I quickly just type that into my calculator, I get an answer of 194 meters. Then for question 23, it says work out the average acceleration of the cyclist during the 40 seconds, and you must state your units of your answer. So if I go back to work out the average acceleration, it's basically the velocity over the time. So acceleration equals velocity over time, in which the total velocity was 6, the total time was 40 seconds, and so that then becomes 3 over 20, which becomes 0.15, and the units I want are meters per second squared, or you can say meters per second to the power of -2. Moving on to question 24, so we're nearing the end now on the final stretch, so let's just zoom in so we can see it all. It says simplify fully 8x squared plus 4 over 5x multiplied by 3x over 14x squared plus 7. Now for this, what you want to do is a number of ways in which you could do this, but I would strongly recommend is that we factorize these two sides here. So I've got, I could take 4 out, so that's going to be 4 lots of 2x squared plus 1 over 5x, and multiplied by 3x over, and we could take 7 out, and we get 2x squared plus 1. So from this, what you can see is if we combine those two things there, this bracket cancels with this bracket, this x cancels with this, so all we're left with is 4 times 3 over 5 times 7, which is 12 over 35. So looking at question 25, it says here are 2 square-based paving stones. The stones are similar solids. The price per centimetre cube is the same for both stones. The price of the larger stone is £17.50. Work out the price of the smaller stone. Now this question relates to similar area volume in terms of shapes. So for this, what we need to first work out is the length scale factor, which is 25 over 20, which is 5 over 4. Now, if this length scale factor is 5 over 4, then the volume scale factor is going to be 5 cubed over 4 cubed, which is 125 over 64. Now, to go from the big shape to the small shape, we divide by the scale factor. So what we want to do is we want to work out the volume. So we want to work out the price. So if we imagine that the price, well, not imagine, the price of the smaller one is £17.50. So if we divide that by 125 over 64, we get an answer of £8.96, which makes sense because we're buying a smaller paving stone. So we should expect an answer that's smaller than £17.50. Moving on to question 26, it says Rick borrows £1,500 from a bank. He pays £100 each month. The iterative formula works out the amount he still owes at the end of each month. AO equals 1,500, and the question is asking us to work out the amount he still owes at the end of the second month. So for this, if we first of all work out how much he owes after the first month, well, that's going to be 1.02 multiplied the previous value, which is 1,500. Let me just write that in a different colour. And we subtract 100. Now, if I type all of that into my calculator, I get an answer of £1,430. So then for the second month, that's going to be 1.02 multiplied the previous answer, which is 1,430, and then we take away 100. So if I type this all into my calculator, I get an answer of 1358.60, and that is how much he still owes. Moving on to question 27, it says g of x is equal to 8a times b to the power of x, where a and b are constants, when g of 0 is equal to 8 and g of 3 is equal to 343. Work out the value of g of 1. So taking the first bit of information of g0 equals 8, so basically when I substitute x equals 0, g of x equals 8. So if I substitute this information into this formula here, then what I end up with is a times b to the power of 0 equals 8. So b to the power of 0 is just 1, so a equals 8. So now that I know the value of a, I then can work out the formula, or part of the formula. So I've got a times bx. Well, I know that a equals 8, so I've got 8 times bx. Now when x equals 3, g of x equals 343. So substituting this information into this, we get 8 times b to the power of 3 equals 343. Now what I then want to do is solve this. So if I take the 8 over to the other side by dividing by 8, then what I end up with is b cubed equals 343. So b is then going to equal the cube root of 343. And if I type that into my calculator, well, actually 343 divided by 8, let me just extend that root. And that should be divided by 8. Let me write that as 343 over 8. And then typing this into my calculator, I get a b value of 28. Moving on to question 28, it says VABCD is a pyramid with a horizontal square base. X is the center of the base and V is vertically above X. If BD is equal to 18 centimeters and angle VBX is equal to 72, work out the length of VB. Now with these particular questions, it's always important that you establish what it is we're working at. So we want to know what this orange line here is. I'm just going to colour it there. Now, to work that out, I need to know this triangle here. And looking at the information that I know, well, I know that BD is equal to 18. So that means that this bit here is 9, and so is that bit. We know that the angle VBX, which is VBX, which is this angle here, is equal to 72. Now, if I take this triangle out, in which this is the center and this is B, this is V, and this is X, then what I know is that that's 72, that's 9, and this is what I'm wanting to work out. Actually, that center point's not labeled, so we just call it C, shall we? So from this, what I can then do is use SOHCAHTOA trig to work out what X is. So labeling the triangle, I've got H and I've got A, so that's going to be using cos. So cos 72 equals adjacent over the hypotenuse. So that's going to be 9 over x. So then to work out x, I take x to the other side, and that equals 9. So x equals 9 divided by cos 72. And if I type that into my calculator, I get an answer of around 20 something. Let me just type it in now. 9 divided by cos 72. I get an answer of 29.1 degrees, and that's to 1 decimal place. Then moving on to question 29, which I believe is our last question. It says that a code is 3 letters, each of which is in the word of Logic. Vinny assumes that the letters in the code may be used more than once. He works out how many possible codes there are. In fact, that the first 2 letters are the same and the third is different. How many different codes are not possible? So let's have a look at this then. So first things first, let's work out the total number of combos. And that's going to be 5 times 5 times 5, because we've got 5 letters to choose. So we've got 5, 5, 5, and they could be the same, it could be different, and that comes up to a total of 125. Now the total number of valid codes is going to be, well, if we've got a choice of 5 numbers as the first digit. Now the second digit, well, that has to be the same as the first digit because it says that the first 2 letters are the same. So then we've only got 1 number to choose from because that's going to be the same as the first choice. And then out of the choices that are left, we've got 4 numbers left. So if I then do 5 times 1 times 4, that gives me a total of 20. And then not valid is going to be these 2 numbers subtracted, and that's going to give me an answer of 105. And there we go.